Hello guys and welcome to a new deck tech on this channel. Today we are going to look at a new card from the new set Kaldheim that is in my opinion completely bonkers. It's Tergrid, God of Fright. So let's look at the card. Tergrid, God of Fright is 5 mana for a 4/5 legendary creature god. Menace, whenever an opponent sacrifices a non-token permanent or discards a permanent card, you may put that card from a graveyard onto the battlefield under your control. She also can flip into an artifact, Tergrid's Lantern. Tap, target player loses 3 life unless they sacrifice a non-land permanent or discard a card. And 4 mana to untap Tergrid's Lantern. So the backside isn't that important. This deck has a strategy to let your opponent sacrifice and discard so that you can play with their stuff. It's a budget-friendly deck and it's hella lot of fun. Not for your opponents though. So let's look at the different categories. First we're going to look at the discard category of the deck. Awaken the Erstwhile lets us discard all the cards in our opponent's hands and get a board present at the same time. This maybe can be one of the most powerful cards in the deck. A perfect play for turn 6 when your commander is on the board. If you're lucky, you can knock a player down at turn 7. So pretty great. Bottomless Pit is great because we get a consistent discard trigger, so a consistent reanimation trigger. It is also a benefit that it's random, because then our opponents don't have the choice and have to discard their permanent cards. Because remember, we only can play their permanent cards. If they discard a sorcery or an instant, for example, we get nothing to discard. Dark Deal, also a great include. You get every permanent card in everybody's hand and then draw a new hand so you can start your shenanigans all over again. Delirium lets the whole table discard and possibly lets you reanimate their things. But they can of course choose. But the chance that there is a permanent card in those 3 cards is still fairly big, and especially with 4 players. Who says you can't land ramp in black? Desolation lets us play the sacrificed lands of every player on the table, but you got to remember it's a global effect, so it's also for you. Fraying Omnipotence, also a bonkers card in this deck. You let everybody lose life, discard and sacrifice. Those are the 2 things we want in this deck, so great synergy with the commander. Despise is a budget Thoughtseize in the deck and lets you basically choose which creature you want to steal from your opponents. Alright, let's look at the sacrifice category of this deck. Because again, our commander interacts with discard and sacrifice. Archon of Depravity is overall a good card, but in this deck it's great. Especially when your opponents don't see it coming. It offers us a consistent sec trigger and it's taxy for heavy creature builds. Demon's Disciple, Flashback Marauder, Merciless Executioner and Plaguecrafter are all in the deck because their ETB lets us reanimate again. And Vona's Hungry and Yana's Triumphants are great instant speed cards that lets our opponents sacrifice their creatures so that we can steal them. So I wanted to shout out some cards that are just MVPs in the deck. Just great value and synergizes 100% with our commander. The first one is Dead Cloud. I'm just gonna let you read them. Can be a finisher in the first place and lets us do the 2 things we want the most. And we even ramp because they have to sacrifice the lands. Amazing card in this deck. Really an MVP in my opinion. 2 other MVPs are the Poxes. Again, the same as with Dead Cloud. Great cards, a lot of sacrifice, discard and ramp. Great cards. Now I want to give you guys a quick look in the card draw section of this budget deck. We run the standard black burst card draws, of course, that you always see in EDH games. If you have a Phyrexian Arena at home, put them in the deck. But for this budget brew, this will do just fine. I wanted to highlight Siphon Mine because it lets our opponents again discard and again steal their discarded cards. So great cards in this deck. Now, because we are discarding and sacrificing a lot of things, I wanted to include some payoff cards. Blood Artist is an obvious Aristocrat Priest that triggers on our opponent's creatures. Commented Dreadhorn lets us do damage and reanimate the discarded cards. A great card if our commander is destroyed or enchanted or has become too expensive to play. Harvester of Souls is good to card draw that benefits from our sacrifice triggers. And Sangromancer synergizes with our discard triggers, so pretty good payoff cards. So I didn't talk about every card in the deck, but I wanted to highlight some categories to let you know what the strategy is and how you are going to achieve this. For the ramp section, etc., you can look at the decklist link in the description, but now let's talk about the budget. This deck is around €40 and it shouldn't be. This is an extreme powerful deck in the right meta, and especially for this price. It's a blast to play, but not to play against. And you gotta know this because you won't make friends with this deck. So your playgroup will probably target you when you steal their stuff and mess with their hands. But the cool aspect is that the deck its power level is dependent on the power level of the opponents, their decks. Because you essentially play with their cards, like a clone deck. But as I said, overall a cool new deck with a cool new commander from Kaldheim and something different. I also wanted to quick point out some, if you don't mind the budget, for some upgrades that you can do that are a bit pricier. So we also can include, you always can include a Rankle. It also wants to do the two things that we want the most, discard and sacrifice. A Thoughtseize is pretty great because you essentially choose what you want. Painful Quandary is a great stacks piece, and of course Tiny Bones lets us benefit from our discarded things that we do. So yeah, pretty good upgrades. If you have them in your binder lying around, put them in the deck. If you like this kind of content, these deck decks, give the video a like and subscribe. It means a lot. I'm going to try to put out a video every week and it's nice to see my channel grow. And yeah, support my Patreon. Psych, don't have any Patreon. And on that last note, bye and have a good one.